What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Dr. Be Well. Today's episode is brought to you by Elevate. Elevate is a functional mushroom company with products ranging from chai tea to coffee to capsules. They have the chaga, they have the lion's mane, they have the reishi, they have everything. Follow them on Instagram at Elevate. Today's episode is going to be with one of my respected guests. She is returning, Marianne Williamson. Giddy up. See you guys in there. Welcome, Marianne. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's great to see you again.
You too.
Times have changed, a little bit since I saw you last, and we've seen you last. Donald Trump has since won the election. How are you feeling?
Well, Steve, a lot of the grief that people are saying that they're feeling, I've been feeling for the last year and a half. A lot of the shock that people are saying that they're feeling, I've been saying for a year and a half, this is what's going to happen. And as you know, because you hosted one of the events, where I was able to get to people, people heard that. That's to me the sadness of this moment, that the American people, I believe, would have taken a different direction if a genuinely different direction had been available to them. I felt as a candidate with the kinds of things I was saying that the Democratic Party threw a blanket over my head, including there in New Hampshire, very much so in New Hampshire. And so it didn't have to be this way. But we are where we are now. And I'm reminded of a statement by Abraham Lincoln when he said, there's not that much evil that any government in the United States will ever be able to perpetrate as long as the people remain vigilant. Now, when he said that, he was referring specifically to the fact that according to our Constitution, we can completely throw out every member of the House of Representatives and replace them with new people every 2 years. Now, in a practical sense, that's become very difficult because of gerrymandering, because of all the ways that incumbents are given an advantage, and of course, the undue influence of money. But I think that at a certain point, what you do with your grief is you become active. So I believe that every single person in America, except those who are happy that Trump won in a democratic election, and congratulations to Trump supporter. I'm talking now to people who are not happy with the outcome of the election. The time to get started in terms of elections 2 years from now is literally today. Not only that, but two things that I would add to that: get involved on the level of the primary, because part of what happened with this last election was people were checked out, zoned out. They didn't realize the importance of the primary. Therefore, they didn't see the shenanigans that were being carried out there, the real
No one
actual
talked about it
suppressing
at
of.
all, Marianne. And like you said, for a year and a half ago when you were on my show, we said this exact same stuff that was going to happen. We knew that Biden wasn't going to be the candidate, that that they were subverting the election. They weren't allowing, you on certain, on all media. They were censoring you, and when you came to my event, we had 200 people there, and people were fired up with
Absolutely.
what you were saying, and
Right, absolutely. But there's one other thing I'd like to add, if I might. Um, History, Steve. I would recommend to anybody who's saying, what can we do? What can we do? Read up on American history. Read anything by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Um, Read anything about the founders. When you read about the great presidents, when you read about Franklin Roosevelt, when you read about Teddy Roosevelt, when you read about Lincoln, when you read about Jefferson, when you read about the founding of this country, you gain power, because what's happening is that principles are being transgressed that we did not protect. And one of the reasons we didn't protect them is because too many of us don't have a gut connection to what they are. We know this is wrong, but not enough of us can say exactly why. So I think, one of the things I probably said that night at your place was that this is a moment when those of us who love our country, no matter who we are, Because a lot of the problem here is that we surrendered our own critical thinking. We surrendered our power to institutions that we thought were going to take care of this stuff. Right now, each and every one of us must begin to think of political activism as simply a layer of a well-lived, meaningful life. I do think there's been such a wake up, so much activation within people over the last 2 days, and that's good. I think a lot of people have grown up and woken up over the last 2 days. So thank you for letting me say that. I just wanted to point out those things that I think are really vital aspects of the correction that's needed now.
Yeah, there could have been, like, I've heard you say there could have been a growth of like healthy left-wing populism that came about, that if you were out there and other people like RFK, he was out there in the Democratic primary, it's populism. That's exactly what it was. He was speaking to the people. You guys are speaking to the people. And the Republican side had been doing that for a while with Trump, and the Democrats, even before they did it with Bernie. Bernie was he's a populist candidate, and they snuffed him out. The DNC made sure that he didn't win that primary either. With Hillary in 2016, and so I think that people were finally like, we're fed up, and it's maybe they don't know what we're getting into, and I'm the right wing populism and where that goes, and it's kind of funky because I grew up as a Democrat. My father was in the union. I since became an independent because I like to think that I independently could critically think, and I didn't really like where the Democratic Party was going. But now you see a lot of Democrats, people who, would consider themselves like me, had voted Republican in this election. And they also will say like that the Republican Party is now, they have the values of the old Democratic Party, say no censorship, no war. And I, I don't know if that's true or not. I feel
No,
like,
it's not.
yeah. Do they have we'll see if, like, if, the corporate influence, that still very much so exists. And that's usually where the GOP, they're always in bed together. So, I'm just curious as what the next steps will be with that.
Well, I do agree with a lot of the criticism of the Democratic Party. However, I do not agree that somehow the Republican Party has been the party of peace. I mean, what happened is that the Democratic Party allowed us to just drop so many diamonds on the beach. And, and Donald Trump is a very shrewd salesman. He said, fine, I'll pick it up. I mean, so he says, oh, yeah, oh, we're for peace. Putin had not yet invaded Ukraine, and October 7th had not yet happened. So when it comes to, in both those wars, for instance, we don't really know what Donald Trump is going to do. Part of his campaigning was a message that they would never have happened had he been president. Well, there's some things to listen to, but we don't know. It's not as though the military-industrial complex was reduced. It's not like its power was reduced during his first time in the White House. I think also a lot of people in the more higher consciousness community voted Republican because of their attraction to Bobby Kennedy. Now, I like Bobby. Bobby is my friend. However, I think that there has been a bit of a naivete here, not about Bobby, but about Trump. People would say, I'm voting for Bobby. Bobby was not on a ballot. So he serves, as does anyone in an administration, at the pleasure of the president. So now that Trump is there, I'm glad that Bobby is there. And I think when it comes to things such as food, I certainly agree with a lot of what he's saying. And I had those same kinds of policies actually in my own campaign. We'll see. We want to be supportive of whatever the president is doing, the administration is doing that we can like, but many of his policies are absolutely devastating to the environment, for instance. We need to be ramping down, not ramping up fossil fuel extraction. A core to his policy position is ramping up as fast as possible, as big as possible, exactly that. His policy is drill, baby, drill. So if you have any concern about the environment, the idea that the Republicans have become the great saviors is truly contrary to facts. I personally think the idea of mass deportations is horrifying. Do we have a problem at the border and we need to address certain issues? Absolutely. But mass deportations especially, he will even, he talks so casually about bringing in the National Guard. We already have too much militarization of our police. The last thing we need is to begin to look at the National Guard as this adjunct to local police. We don't want a police state in the United States. And people need to start thinking about what that means. But I'd like to go back a little bit to Bernie Sanders. I have tremendous respect for Bernie Sanders. I think of myself as an acolyte of Bernie Sanders. A student of Bernie Sanders. I have the same respect, even adulation for him in many ways that so many others do. And I endorsed him in 2020 when I dropped out. However, let's be very clear. Early in my campaign in New Hampshire, and as you know, New Hampshire is a genesis that's where it all starts. Very early, Bernie came to New Hampshire. I assume at the request of the Biden campaign. I can't imagine he would have woken up one morning and said, oh, I think I'm going to go to New Hampshire. He gathered, this was before my campaign had its sea legs in New Hampshire. He gathered all the progressives. He gave a speech that it could have been my speech. I stood for the exact same left-wing populist agenda that he did. And he said to this huge gathering of progressives in New Hampshire, so we've all got to vote for Joe Biden. Because Bernie was in with the theory that all they had to do, was reelect Joe and then win the Senate, and then they would have another shot at something like Build Back Better. Well, sorry, Bernie. Democracy is our technique here, not that kind of manipulation and engineering. So he went with the calculations that basically what we needed to do was just put all of our attention on voting for Joe. Now, people who felt that all their attention needed to be on voting for Joe, they certainly had a right to have that opinion and to do that. But to actually act in ways that undercut the ability of anyone else to be heard is not what we're supposed to be doing, whether it's the DNC or any particular character such as Bernie. I'm sure he had the best of intentions, but that was not cool, Joe. I mean, Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it wasn't cool at all. And I think that Bernie, everyone remembers Bernie as that way, like the guy who's, breaking down the establishment and doing this. And like, no, like really, like sure, he tried, but then when he failed, he got in line.
That's right. When he failed, he got in line. That's exactly right. And so this romanticization right now is not quite, I mean, God bless him, and I have tremendous respect, but we need to see that's part of
we need to move on. I think we need to just move on, like, from Bernie Sanders and from that whole thing. Like, I think that if the Democratic Party wants to exist and wants to actually have a chance to fight in the 2026 elections and the 2028 elections, they really need to find good candidates out there. They need to find people who are speaking they need to change. The message needs to completely change. It needs to be, I don't.
No, it's deeper than that. You say they need to find the right candidate. With all due respect, I think I was one.
You were the right candidate, yeah.
But hold on, please. The issue is not they need to find the right candidate. They have not permitted what you and I might see as the right candidates to have any space. They suppressed anyone that you and I might think is the right candidate. So when you say they need to find the right candidate, it goes deeper than that. Who you and I call the right, what they need to do is return to democracy is what they need to do.
Yeah, return to democracy.
The role of any political party is not to find anything. The role of any political party is to stand back, to facilitate democracy, not manipulate it, not engineer it, not try to figure out who should be the candidate. Their role should be to expose to the electorate whoever is a qualified FEC registered candidate and make that easy. What happened in New Hampshire, for instance, is quite the opposite. The corruption of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, basically from the very top. My own people there were told, let her have her fun, make some money, make sure she doesn't get anywhere. The corruption was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So,
The
so the
Democratic
issue,
Party, I do want to ask you about that later, but continue. And, in the
well,
Congress race here.
let's go back to George Washington and John Adams, our second president. George Washington, in his farewell address, said that he feared that political parties would form factions of men more loyal to their party than to their country. And that's exactly what happened. Then John Adams, our second president, said that he feared they would become the greatest threat to our democracy. So what the Democratic Party needs is to become humble, to become deeply self-aware. It's they need someone to facilitate, and I'm sure they'd have me they'd die before they'd have me do this. But someone like myself is exactly who needs to do it, to sit down to some of those leaders and to do a deep dive into what the hell happened over the last few years that you let the working people of the United States so stray away that they don't think any longer that this is the party of the working people. I see Trump's victory as having really, it's a phenomenon that was simply taking advantage of a void that in too many ways was created by the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party needs to have what I think of as a kind of political equivalent of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And a lot of those people, I've been very disappointed over the last 2 days because you don't see, at least in the surrogates that are out there on CNN, on MSNBC, in the New York Times, and so forth, there doesn't seem to be so far anyway, the post-game analysis does not seem to involve any contrition. It seems to involve, it was everybody else's fault. It was the Latinos' fault. It was the
White
left
men's fault, white women's fault.
Yeah. It was everybody's fault, but there. So the problem we have here is that on one hand, I said to you, and I do believe that we all need to get busy right now. You need to absolutely get busy in knowing who's going to run for Congress in your congressional election this year. And you need to, I don't know if New Hampshire will have a Senate race in 2026. Only a third of the states every 2 years has a Senate. So I don't know if you guys will have a Senate race in
I think that they might. I think they might be due. I think they might.
Okay.
It might be up.
Well, get involved on the primary level, and
Well,
if it's and we've
I
got
want to
to,
ask.
may I just finish this one thing? We've got to turn the House and the Senate Democratic in 2026, but stand up as a citizen and say what you believe and resist anything that you feel is the institutionalized Democratic Party trying to manipulate the race.
Well, I love. Well, I love that because I had the privilege of getting to interview a Republican candidate for District 2 here. New Hampshire has 2 districts. District 1, where we are here in in the Seacoast, and then District 2 is the other side of the state. Lily Tang Williams, and her opponent, who ended up winning, Maggie Goodlander, is a person who was a Washington person for was born and raised in Nashua, but then went to Washington, D.C. to work with Biden. Her husband is Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor. They, got so much money donated to them by big PACs, that came in $20 to $30 million. She rented a house in Nashua, but owns a $3 million house in Portsmouth. So owns a house in District 1, but was running in District 2, just where she rents. Like that person, I can't support that person. I asked her to come on my show. I kept trying to engage with her. She wouldn't engage with me, at all. And then the Republican candidate, I didn't even think to reach out. And, it just happened. It happened because, almost out of happenstance. And I listened to this person, and she was a regular person who was, had a good, had some good point of views, and was actually just a regular person who's not, a completely rich person who, was supplanted here from Washington. So I hear what you're saying, that we do need to, but I don't think we just need to flip it blue just to flip it blue, just to get back. I think the policies need to completely change. I think that the whole party needs to completely change and completely be different, and likely get people like that, Maggie Goodlander, see you later. Like you're not the candidate. You're not the person that the new Democratic Party is going to support.
Well, I agree with a lot of what you just said, but let's break that down a little bit. According to the Constitution, she doesn't have to live in the district. So I think her bigger mistake was doing something so ridiculous. She should have just been honest and said, I live in Portsmouth, but I'm running for, because the Constitution doesn't say you have to. So it was such an obviously performative piece of silliness that of course was going to be exposed. I saw, that viral with Lily Tang Williams, that's her name, right? It
Yeah.
went viral. So you didn't have to live in New Hampshire to have seen that all over the internet. This is, on one hand, see, this is the problem. It's like when you said at the beginning of the podcast, have the Republicans become what the Democrats used to be? Everything you're saying about Goodlander in terms of this kind of elitist Democratic perspective, I agree with you. The problem is Lily Tang Williams, even though I love the way she came on as a regular person and she is one and she talked about what's true, the problem is this is what's so mind-boggling. When it comes to actual policies, everything that Lily Tang Williams was saying is served more by the Democrats than by the Republicans. Lily Tang Williams should be a Democrat. The problem with the Democratic Party is that it paves the way for a Goodlander because she's rich and elite, and would make it more difficult for Lily Tang Williams, who they would treat like, what are you doing here, little girl? You get out. Meanwhile, the Republicans embrace her because she is a populist. But when it comes to actual policies, what Donald Trump promises is the opposite of what Lily Tang Williams says that we need. It's mixed up. So on a certain level, I agree with you. Just the Democratic Party as it exists now is not the answer. But there's a way in which the Republicans don't walk their talk, but the Democrats don't talk their walk. It's complicated because what you're saying is true too. All of the above.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like it's super complicated, and that's why I feel like it's super important to be having these conversations and to give people the space to have these conversations. I know that like in certain households right now, there you can't even have these conversations with your partner because they're the left side that lost the election is so angry and there's so much hate there that they can't even have a conversation with their loved ones about this and saying like, hey, this is just what happened. And instead we need to find a way to love and move forward. And if we don't like what happened, let's make actual change. Like, we saw what happened with the populist vote. We saw where people wanted to go. People want to be heard. That maybe the policies are a little bit whacked out, if that's your point of view. But they want to be heard, and that's the Republican Party was there and saying, like you said, they were going on the beach and they were saying, "Thanks for the diamond, thanks for the diamond." Like it was almost too easy.
Yeah. Well, everything that you're saying is absolutely true. But I know in my own life, I have some people very close to me who are Trump supporters. And I think for speaking for myself and for them, we've worked hard on protecting the relationship. The smug, self-righteous, angry, elitist stuff is as bad on the left as on the right. And I think self-purification, that's an aspect of nonviolent philosophy, is to purify your own heart. So anybody who is attacking people who voted differently, judging people who voted differently, is really displacing their anger at themselves. Anybody who let this, anyone who let this primary season unfold over the last year and a half without thinking deeply and looking deeply at what was happening and didn't say, wait a minute, that makes no sense to me, and stand up and seek to support candidates who, whether it was me, whether it was Bobby Kennedy, whether it was Dean Phillips, if you didn't try to counter the imposition of the Democratic Party, the suppressing element of the Democratic Party, then in a way this is due in part to your own distractedness. The good thing is now people aren't distracted now, and like you said yourself, now let's move on. But it doesn't start with attacking people who voted differently. In a free society, No one owes it to you to agree with you. And in
Right.
a we don't, nobody has a monopoly on truth. So the angry left winger who acts so, angry now, like, how did this happen? If you actually been present for this, you would have seen exactly how it happened while it was happening. This did not come out of nowhere.
That's like really the thing that we talked about it a year and a half ago, where we said that that they were going to try to do this with Biden and that he wasn't capable. He wasn't capable back then. Like that's the biggest, stress that I have about this is that people will talk to me like, oh yeah, at the debate, that's when we knew. That's when we knew he wasn't caught, he didn't put up at the debate. It's like, man, I have hundreds of hours of video footage of him not speaking English and not being, not being aware, not, being old, having dementia. And we were still supporting this people to the point where we were censoring and putting a blanket over people like you and people like Bobby Kennedy, who, like me, I saw this all happening in real time. And I'm
You were
trying
very,
to do everything I can. I'm trying to get to every Bobby Kennedy event I can go to, every Marianne Williamson event I can go to. I was even considering going to some of the, the GOP stuff because I'm trying to figure out, I need somebody to break down some of these walls. And the Democratic Party, which I always thought was the good anti-war, anti-censorship, party of the people, wasn't representing that at all. And it just, yeah, I am.
well, my kudos to you. I know from my own experience, you're a real patriot. You were doing exactly what you just said. And I was the recipient of your largesse and of your patriotism. And I so appreciated it. And like you said, we were dealing with the fact that a blanket was being thrown over us. You're absolutely right. The Democratic electorate should have been fully exposed, whether it's to me, to Dean Phillips, to Bobby Kennedy. When Bobby just said, to hell with this, they're never going to let me get the nomination. I'm going to go independent. I said to Bobby, everything you said is true. If I had your name and the money you have behind you, because Nicole Shanahan came in, I would have done it too. But the money, the undue influence of money on the system is so great that if you're not able to raise the kind of money to even begin to stand up, meanwhile, let's not forget, it's not just the party, it's the media elite who partner with them. If you are running for president as a Democrat and the electorate never sees you on CNN and never sees you on MSNBC, they don't even know you exist. That's why when you were talking before, which had not been the situation in 2020, you were talking a few minutes ago about how Biden was. I said from the beginning when I first announced, Biden needs to debate me. And then when Bobby came in, Dean, there should have been debates. And every Democratic voter should have said there need to be debates. As it was, when I would do door knocking in New Hampshire, too many people had no idea I exist because they're regular Democrats. They watch MSNBC, they watch CNN. And so what the political media industrial complex, there are three groups here. It's a triad of corruption. It's the DNC, it's the media elite that basically just spew their talking points. That includes the women on The View and many of them. And it includes the donor class. I remember there was a leaked memo, right? And it was from some woman whose name I didn't know, but who was a major donor to the Democratic Party. And it was a memo sent to, I guess, other gazillionaire donors about how, yeah, I think we should go with Kamala and giving the reasons why we should go with Kamala. It was oligarchs talking with no self-awareness. She didn't seem to think that was a problem. She didn't seem to think, wow, we should foster democracy and see what the people want. It was, who are we kidding? We know we have the money to make this happen. And so I think we should go with Kamala.
Yeah. Yeah. The verbose, the egregiousness,
The
to think that
entitlement.
the entitlement, exactly. And, that's why it's like hard not to, to be excited for the people of the United States right now. No matter how much I dislike Donald Trump personally or whatever, the people of the United States did something here. And to me, it was like I saw the Democratic Party, and it's like so weird that you say you have to have these losses to maybe blow things up, but things need to change, and maybe this is a catalyst to further an amazing agenda. And that is what you speak. That's what you speak of, right? There's going to be this next part that comes. That's all love. And that we need to just treat each other nicely and step into the best versions of ourselves. And that will happen. Like, I'll tell you what, Marianne, I've said this to you before, in public and in private conversation with you. Like, I would be a great candidate to run
You would
for the House of Representatives in my district. That's
do it.
you want to know what? And that's the thing is, I will do it. But the daunting task of that, of to go against this, like right now I'm in District 1, so I'd have to run against Chris Pappas, who's an established Democrat who has a lot of money, and that's fine. And I don't know much about Chris Pappas. I didn't study him like I did Maggie Goodlander because of what was going on, and with the dichotomy of it, and Pappas was the incumbent. So I likely will do this at some point in my life, and maybe I start local and I run for local office at in my town, and I start there, but it's so frustrating that somebody like me, somebody who recognized this, was telling people, that was being called names to it because of the people that I was supporting. Oh, you're getting into religion now? Like, what? No, this is Marianne Williamson. She's the spiritual leader. She's non-denominational. Oh, you're an anti-vaxxer now? No, Bobby Kennedy. Yeah, sure, he has the children's health defense, but that's not really what his message is. That's not what we're talking about here. And so I'm the wacko a year and a half ago. I'm those
We were the
people.
wackos. Yeah,
We're the
who's the
wackos.
joke on now?
And who's the joke on now? And it's really true. And it's like I want to live in a world where somebody like me can run for Congress and win. And
Amen. Yo, I'm with you. I do want you to know, Steve, if you look into what's happening there and want to discuss issues and whatever, if I can ever be of support, if I can ever be of help, please let me know.
yes, I mean, you would be one of the first people that I would reach out to, if not the first. 100%. I respect the way that your policies, the way that you explain them, how you were open to collaboration with both sides. Just your spirituality. We just need something. We need something different in the world, and I know that from like my heart led. That's how I am. That's why I would do this, right? Like, it's not something that I would do because someone said to me once, you don't, you don't, like, great leaders don't lead because they want to. They do it because they're called to.
That's
And like
exactly
I,
right.
I just feel
agree with that.
called to lead. Like, I don't feel like it's not necessarily I want to do it. A lot of times it sucks to have these feelings and want to impact change. And
Yeah, I have to, you're right, because it is as bad as you think it is. However, from your mouth to God's ears, I'm glad to hear that that's your sentiment, and I support you in going for it, Steve.
well, I appreciate that so much, Marianne. I do want to ask you one other question because it's everything is opening it up, and there was so much censorship on you. But the reason why one of the reasons why Donald Trump won the election was because there was the censorship seemed to shift on the Twitter X platform. And I'm just curious, were you during your campaign, were you using X? Were you censored on X? Were you?
Okay, let's talk about X, because I think that one of my deepest concerns about this new administration is Elon Musk. No one should have the kind of outsized power that man has. So Elon Musk did these Twitter spaces. He did one with Ron DeSantis. He did one with Bobby Kennedy. He did it with Dean Phillips. And he tweeted out, and including tagging me, tagging all of us, I will do a Twitter space with any registered presidential candidate. And I said 2 or 3 times, I'd be glad to take you up on that. And he wouldn't do it. So he himself is a censor. There is no way, not that I can prove it, but I think it's very clear, ways that I was shadow banned. So no, this idea of Elon Musk posing as this anti-censorship guys, it's like, I'll give you this is what they do. They accuse others, in some cases rightfully, however, of doing what they're absolutely doing and planning to do. Another example is how President-elect Trump is saying the Justice Department should not be weaponized and used in lawfare. He's absolutely right. The Justice Department should be completely independent of politics. However, he's also saying all the people he's going to prosecute. So he's actually announcing at the same time that he's saying the Justice Department should not do that, he is announcing that that's exactly what he's going to do. So that's pure Trumpism right now. Not that he's always wrong about what they did, but he's promising to do it in spades. So it's the whole system that the American people have to wake up to.
Yeah, it literally is like the whole system, because like there's such an, like, for instance, you mentioned it earlier in the conversation with the deportation, like, that's wild. Sure, like if you're a heinous criminal and you've done heinous things to people, then like sure, maybe we're going to talk about deportation, and somehow you got over here, which
Well,
I
if
don't
you've
know
done
if that's
heinous
the
things
case.
to people, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. If you did heinous things. Otherwise, here we need to secure our border. That's what makes a country for sure. Secure the border, do that. But then let's figure out a great program. Let's, with these people who are here now, let's figure out, we need to bring back, American manufacturing. There's plenty of space. There's plenty of, I know we can do anything we put our minds to. So let's just figure out a way to get these people on not to give them citizenship right away. This is an earned thing. This is something to become a United States citizen. It's something that you do need to earn and need to go through. And I was blessed enough to be birthed in this country, but my ancestors had to go through, turmoil and tribulation to get to their point, to get to citizenship. And it shouldn't be hard, but it should be a process. And so,
Well, for many of the people, for millions of people who are not yet citizens, they have done everything right, but the immigration laws make it impossible for them. They basically are forced to live in the shadows, or people told that you have to go back, people who have families, who have businesses told you have to go back to Mexico for 5 years, or people who are told that you just need to show up at the office, but who are in so many cases afraid because they know of people who showed up to do the right thing at the office and were just picked up right there and deported. These are people who have families. These are people who have businesses. These are good people. Even when you talk about violent criminals, when you look at the rate of violent criminality among those who are natural born Americans versus those who are immigrants, there's a higher crime rate among those who are born here. But that's not to say we don't have an issue at the border that has to be fixed. But that's not the left's problem. That's Congress's problem, both left and right, Democrats and Republicans, who for decades now have failed to fix a broken system.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. It's both sides. They failed to fix a broken system, and they just blame it. They blame it on each other. And I
use
do
it as a political football.
Political football. I want to like call out Elon Musk like right now, because I do, I feel, even me, my personal feelings that I'm being pulled towards, feeling like, sympathy and for this, like, okay, this is actually a free Twitter space and people are able, there is no censorship, and this is the freest place where you can, get information right now. Just because if you didn't buy it, Jack Dorsey would still own it, and maybe they'd still be getting messages from the FBI to censor stuff and to not release stuff. And like, so I don't know, like that it stresses me out that it even happened, that we had that type of that someone like you was censored on all the platforms. And so I just feel like pulled that this is a good, but I know I'm being tricked, I feel like I'm being tricked at the same time. So I don't want to say, that I'm so supportive of Elon Musk and Twitter, because like of what you just said, you were offered to go in these Twitter spaces. He did them with these other men, but he didn't do one with you. And so like,
exactly
guess what,
right.
Elon, tell me why, if you can tell me why, explain to me, just Steve Ivanovsky, a regular guy, doesn't have that many, followers on Twitter, on X, just tell me why you didn't, let Marianne Williamson, an amazing presidential candidate who should have gotten to speak and give people her due and say what she had to say. Why was that offered and then not received? I want to know.
Well, it's interesting because he says rightfully that independent media now is as important as legacy media. And in many ways, he's correct. However, then that should mean that they have the same journalistic ethics. It is journalistic malfeasance, whether you are a legacy media platform or a major independent platform, to pick and choose which candidates you think should be exposed to your audience. And that applies to Joe Rogan. It applies to Lex Fridman. It applies to Amy Goodman. It applies to Elon Musk. all of whom wouldn't have me because they don't want to. They didn't want to. They didn't like me. Well, I'm sorry. If you have that much power, I believe you have, it's an issue of journalistic integrity. You have a civic responsibility to use your platform in a way that exposes to people the information. So who is he to now talk about freedom and not censoring? That is a form of censorship. And I'll tell you something else, whether it was CNN or MSNBC or any of those, it's a form of election interference. And it's very subtle. They use narratives. They promulgate narratives. I remember David Plouffe saying she's only doing it for the clout, or Stephanopoulos saying it's only a message campaign. The president has no credible, no credible opponent, no qualified opponent. That to them, qualified meant qualified to perpetuate the machine that the American people made it very clear they have no interest in the other night. So our eyes need to be wide open. I think we need to listen to our own hearts. I think your own heart is telling you that you need to get out there. I'm sure that many people who are listening right now are feeling stirrings. You know, Mahatma Gandhi, when he was asked who is the leader of the Indian independence movement, said the small, still voice within. For those of us who truly make ourselves available to the betterment of our country right now, who want to be available, stop thinking someone else is going to have the answers. Listen to your own heart and move forward. And there is no congressional district that's not important. There's no senatorial race that's not important. There's no corner of any of this that's not important. We all need to get active in whatever way our hearts tell us to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. You know, I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna keep doing this and keep having these conversations and keep putting myself out there. And when the path, when the path seems clear to me, like you said, I'm just gonna follow my heart. I can't help it. That's why and I think that I feel blessed that sometimes in my life I've been upset that I was given these gifts and the skill set of, of connection and sensitivity and understanding of the world and seeing the world. I just I'm a people connector. I know how the world works. I predicted that this was going to happen. I knew that this was going to happen, and
I did
I
too.
exactly, yeah, right, of course, and that's why I am so happy just to be. I'm happy because I exist now. I'm happy that I have these skills and that I've been this way. I've been given this gift because I'm necessary. I'm necessary to help this next phase of what's going to become of humanity in the United States of America, and I'm giddy up. I'm ready. I can't wait to be a part of it.
And America is all the better for it.
Oh, Marianne, you are always amazing. I know you don't have too much time. You got probably tons of people to talk to, and I always appreciate the time that you come and talk with me.
I
Um,
will not forget that you were so good to me when I was running in New Hampshire. You did seek to give me exposure, which is what I needed, and I will never forget the people who, and many of them in New Hampshire, who were so good and who saw all this and who stood for some things that we believe in. So I'm always available to you, Steve. I'm glad we've stayed connected. I thank you for that. And anytime you want to have a conversation with me, I'm right here, and I'm glad you know my cell number.
yeah, I think we're gonna do it regularly. If that, we had talked about
Let's
that, and
do that.
I would really
Let's
like
do
that.
that.
Like once a month we'll get you on the show and just to keep talking about having these conversations, right? How can we change the
Absolutely.
political landscape
Right.
to make this a better Democratic Party, to make it something that could that's so exciting, right? That's so exciting. Like let's make this thing better. Let's make that. Maybe I'll be a Democrat again. Maybe I'll be. I'm an independent right now, and maybe we'll get me back to being a Democrat and supporting the party that
But they
I
should have to
believed,
work for
gave me
that.
my upbringing.
They should have to work for that. They've acted like you had to work for them and said, no, they have to work for you. And I think the country will be better if they do what it takes to get you back.
Yeah, exactly. I know what, and exactly. I'm glad I stood my ground. I'm glad that I'm going to continue to stand my ground, and and I thank you for being a leader in doing that and showing me that it's okay to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Marianne, I thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you. Thank you so much.
Much love to you.
Much
to you later.
love. Giddy up.